everyone. My name is Laurie Smith, and I'm just talking about domestic violence, child abuse, and whatnot for the month of April. Because April is down in the United States, it's the National Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness Month, and so I decided to do 30 shows, one every day for the month of April. And I usually broadcast in April, but not usually 30 days in a row. So I'll be here for the whole month. um, this is information that I've probably talked about before on some of my other shows, I'm sure. And just, because it's stuff that really relates to me growing up abused and in a home full of domestic violence. Um, and familicide was present. And we were, all of us were, that were living in the home were fearful that my dad would kill us and kill himself because he was always threatening to do that. So thankfully he didn't do that. For a while when I was growing up, I wasn't happy to be alive. So I don't think I was all that happy that he didn't, succeed in his plans. Now that I'm older and realize that, life is worth living and it's a gift and shouldn't be taken lightly. And so, my attitude has definitely changed. Um, I'm glad to be here and I'm glad that he didn't kill us. And but I just know the fear of living under that, and so I thought I'd do a we talk about it tonight. I found some articles on familicide and the warning signs of sort of high risk. You know, what would be high risk for homicide of especially women, and in an intimate partner situation, domestic violence and abuse, domestic homicide, stuff like that. So that's what we're talking about. It's not a fun subject. It's not a fun topic. I know, like, if you're sensitive to the topics of abuse, and you think this might bother you, then, just go watch something else. You wouldn't be hurting my feelings. And, if you just feel like it's just not something you're interested in, that's fine. I'm doing this because I'm mainly a child abuse prevention public speaker. And I've been doing this for many years now, um, since roughly since 2009, started speaking about this stuff publicly. And so, I'm used to talking about it, but I lived this life. I grew up abused, and that was my whole life growing up. So it's the norm, unfortunately, the norm for me, dealing with this kind of stuff. And so I'm okay talking about it, but it's hard to listen to this stuff, and it's not fun, right? So, listen at your own discretion, right? And we're going to look at some articles. I did put some links into the show page, and you can go and check those out yourself and read through them. They're just kind of, there is information on familicide, but it's almost all just statistics, and not a whole lot talking about what the issues are. And then I found a couple little articles where they just barely talked a little bit about the issues, and especially if there's any surviving children or family members who actually survive and aren't killed in a familicide situation. So we're going to look at what it is, some of the stats, some of the risk factors, um, and just talk a little bit. And I'll just probably add my stuff to it as we're talking of what it was like to grow up in a home where our lives were being threatened, and mainly by my dad. And my life was being threatened by my mom, but she wasn't threatening everybody's life. She was threatening my life quite a bit, and threatening to kill me. And then she was always talking about killing herself. My mom was suicidal. She had suicidal ideation. My dad was suicidal, but my dad was more than suicidal ideation. He actually was suicidal, and he used to try to kill himself. So suicide just was in our family. That was the norm. Unfortunately, two of my siblings took their own lives in their mid 30s, not together, but so many years apart, and so they didn't make it much past 35. One committed suicide at the age of 33, and another one committed suicide at the age of 36. So I was heading on the same road, and another sibling of mine, the oldest sibling, my sister, was also suicidal, and she had a gun, and she used to disappear for days, and we just wondered if she was going to kill herself or she'd come home, to her family, to her husband and her children. Um, such a sad situation for children to grow up in. That's why I titled my website "Born in Hell" because it really was. It was a living nightmare. It was like some of these horror movies. That's why I really never appreciated horror movies because my life was a horror movie, and those horror movies just reminded me of living at home with my crazy parents. you know, it was not much fun, and it just it was really more like a horror movie in many ways. And so this stuff is very very hard. So you know, and there's so many victims of this stuff that it's not even funny, and the world doesn't want to hear about it and talk about it. And who can blame them, right? As I was talking about in one of my earlier shows this at the start of this month. um, Probably show one or two that are April 1st, April 2nd, in there somewhere. That it's understandable why people really don't want to hear about this stuff. It's disturbing, but in the meantime, children are dying, people are dying, and people are being abused horrifically, and the world, just kind of goes on and rolls by, and they are, working on, developing programs that actually work and to save people's lives, save families, and save children from abuse. But it's just coming along so slowly. And in the meantime, there's just so many more victims, people who like kill their children, and when they could have just gotten some help, and people who and they don't care because they don't mind killing their own children. They just don't mind. It's not something that bothers them. That's why they can do that. So this is a real problem, and it just breaks my heart. So we're talking about it for 30 days, and I figured, hey, I may as well. I mean, who knows how long I'll be doing broadcasting here on YouTube, and I thought, it's the least I can do. 30 hours devoted to, just creating more awareness, and speaking about this stuff because it's very important to me. I'd like to see the situation change for children tonight, so that we don't lose not even one more child, right? So I'm looking actually at the camera, but it shows me looking down, and I'm just not sure why. It's a little bit odd, but it's just very very sad. It really is, and I wish we could change this tonight for the children, so that there won't be any more abuse, no more, no more trauma, and it's just not going to happen. We have so much work to do as a world population, to change the way that people feel about children, to change the way that people feel about, you know, about people, people around them. People aren't put on the earth just for other people to mistreat and abuse, and and it doesn't matter who it is, right? That's why we have human rights, thank God. And and we need more. We need more done. Children, right? Children have rights. I went through and talked about the child rights already. Forget which night it was, but I've already done a show on child rights. And children have the right to life, and they don't have, they aren't. They're to be protected. They're to be looked after and cared for, protected, loved, and nurtured, and not killed, not abused. So I just keep talking, right? And that's what we're doing here tonight. So um, there's one article that I actually found that I didn't list, that I'll actually put into the link into the show page later, and it's because I just found it. So first, we're going to look at Familicide in Canada. This is from, and this website's not secure, but I'm not really going over too far around into it. So cdhpi.ca, and it's Familicide Canada. It's actually a Canadian government website, and it says not secure, so that's not good. Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada. They're the ones putting out this article, and it's Familicide Canada 2010 to 2019. And we're not going to go into all the stats and all this. There's tons of stats information there, and it's just, you can read that if you want to, but it's just a brief snippet about familicide. And what is familicide? Familicide is a type of mass killing that involves family members as victims. Definitions of familicide vary, often based on the perpetrator's relationship with their victims. And some scholars define familicide broadly, such as one family member killing multiple other family members. For the purpose of this brief, we're using the Following definition, an individual killing his or her current or former spouse and at least one biological or stepchild. And so familicide is an individual killing his or her current or former spouse and at least one child, like one biological or one stepchild, right? Or more. Um, we've seen some of these headlines that have rolled out, through the years of people, wherever they are, mainly in the United States, because that's the news that I was looking at. Um, and it happens everywhere. It happens all around the world. It's not just something that just happens certain places. I mean, every place can have this going on. But, there'll be one person who just decides to take out the whole family and annihilate the whole family. And it's sad. I mean, abuse is bad. But abuse, it's at least the victims, if they haven't been killed, can get some help, go on to have decent lives as long as they get some help and get some support. Whether it's the other parent or the children. But familicide, man, it just ends it all for everybody, and that's tragic. It really is to see these headlines rolling out where someone has killed their wife or their spouse or you know um, their girlfriend or whatever it is, common law relationship person, whatever, and they've killed the children and maybe some aunts and uncles, maybe the grandparents, who knows, maybe the parents, the other parents, and just killed like a whole family situation. Then you can imagine what that does to any remaining family members who are left, and that's just heartbreaking, especially when there's children involved. And I've heard people say in the past, why don't they just go kill themselves and leave the family alone? And that's sad enough, but that's true. Somebody who wants to end their life but wants to take everybody with them. I mean, that's pathetic. Um, but that's what I grew up in. And my dad was mentally ill, psychologically ill, and so was my mom. But my dad was worse by far. He was um, paranoid, schizophrenia, paranoia. He just he thought that the demons were always after him, that the devil was after him. He was very very traumatized. He was a traumatized person, and so that's why sometimes I would feel sorry for him because I'd be like, what a way to live your life, to be thinking always in the middle of the night screaming that the devil's trying to get you and stuff. He would quite often have psychotic episodes at night. So if he wasn't yelling about the demons trying to get him or the devil, then he was walking around in the middle of the night talking about how he should kill us all. And he'd just be going room to room and he'd be like, I should just kill us all. We're all demon seed. We're from the devil. And we shouldn't be here. And he'd be talking about killing our whole entire family and my mom. And so I just grew up hearing this, you know what I mean? And of course I was afraid. Absolutely. When I was a little girl, this was really going on, especially from when I was born, from the time I was born, probably all the way through probably, I think he sort of stopped doing that. What age was I? Probably 8 or 9. I think from 0 to 8 or 9. Because after that, I don't remember him doing that. So it was my early years. And, that used to scare me as a very small child. I wasn't close to my mother. My mother was my main abuser. So there wasn't anybody that could just, go to for comfort or, to sort of ease the fears or whatever. It's like, oh, well, dad's just mentally ill, don't have to worry too much about him. My other siblings were worried too. I mean, we were all concerned that he might kill us all. And that's no way to grow up, you know? It's just horrible the situation that people are in that they don't get help, and end up taking out their whole families. So they got a whole bunch of stats here on this one. This cdhpi.ca link, which I'm not going to go into. And they said characteristics of familicide perpetrators. Now this was done just based on the studies that they were doing. Um, and the common characteristics of familicide that they found were primarily male, 30 to 40 years of age, history of domestic violence, and accused was more likely to commit suicide. So, um, history of domestic abuse. There's often a history of domestic violence by familicide perpetrators, including physical violence, intimidation, threatening behavior. Although a history of domestic violence is not always reported by police, this information is often reported by family, friends, neighbors to the media after the familicide occurs. You know, it's just hidden behind closed doors. Nobody wants to deal with it, and it's that, and then people end up dead, murdered. Terrible, terrible, terrible. Um, characteristics. Let's see. Characteristics of the primary victims, usually female adult, often common law or legal spouse, recent pending separation, and more likely to live in like a rural sort of area, I guess. Yeah, just terrible. And they go on to list all sorts of stuff, types of weapons used and stuff. We're not going to get into that. Previous familicide research found that the majority of perpetrators either commit suicide or attempt suicide following the attack. And this is particularly true when children are killed. The perpetrator is significantly more likely to commit suicide after killing the children. Women do it too. I've seen several headlines of cases rolled out um, that women had killed their children and then attempted to kill themselves or did kill themselves. It's not just only just a male, you know, who's the perpetrator of these types of crimes. Women are perfectly capable of doing this, and they do. And it's just so sad. They said familicide perpetrators who commit suicide have been found to have the following characteristics. They sought help for a variety of mental health problems, including depression, personality disorders, self-destructiveness, and/or substance abuse. Have unstable social relationships, including recent separations, a history of violence towards children, intimate partners, and other people, and a documented criminal history. Now, my dad was not a criminal, as far as that goes. He might have been a criminal because he was abusing. Well, he was a criminal in that way because he was abusing, um, you know, my mother and the children. But he didn't have a criminal background as far as being a thief or whatever, that type of stuff. Hi, Boo. Donna's here, my bestie. How are you? I hope you're feeling better. I hope you're having a better day. And yeah, we're talking about familicide tonight, which is really depressing. But I just thought, we talked about domestic violence yesterday, and I thought we may as well talk about familicide while we're talking about that because it does happen. It's rare, thank God. It doesn't happen all the time. But when you see those cases and those headlines come out where someone's, whether it's the husband or the wife or whatever in the situation, ends up kills the whole family and then kills himself. And that is sad. I mean, it's like no chance for help, no chance for, they're just dead, you know? And that's sad. Somebody must have known that there were problems. Somebody must have known that this, I don't think it's very rare that somebody just snaps and, they were fine one day and then all of a sudden the next day they were like, oh, I got to kill my family and I got to kill myself. I don't think so. There'd have to be all sorts of indicators and, you know, that this person's unstable and that they're capable of doing something like this and that they would do it if they had the opportunity, sort of thing, or something just set them off. Um, that's an unstable person, right? That's not somebody who, just decides one day, oh, I guess I'm having a bad day, so I'll just kill everybody, kill myself. I bet you very few of those cases are that. I think that those people, like they said, they talked to family members who were not killed and relatives, neighbors, and they reported to the media that that person had a history of, whatever the situation was, you know, violence or, you know, whatever the issues are. So it's just horrible. Warning signs. Um, and that's when you have to get involved and you have to make a phone call. You know what I mean? Because these people, this is serious stuff. And situations in domestic violence. I mean, Donna Shears covered, and Lee Roberts have covered just so much material on domestic violence, and so have I. But I mean, Donna Shear's written books about it, and it's like it's so deadly, absolutely deadly, and people take risks with their lives because they don't, they think that by leaving the abuser and getting out of that domestic violence situation, it's going to be too hard. They might lose their children, or it's going to be too hard. It's like, well, it's kind of better than being killed. And a lot of people who are in domestic violence situations, they think, oh, he wouldn't kill me or she wouldn't kill me. Whoever the, perpetrator is, whoever the abuser is in the situation. Oh, they wouldn't kill me. They're just abusive, right? You don't know that, right? And I wouldn't, I would say don't take a chance with your life like that or your children's lives, right? Because this type of intimate partner violence is deadly, and it happens more than we like to think about. And so it's a sad situation. But I'm just talking about this as far as for child abuse prevention and awareness that children grow up in these types of homes because I did. And, it's not fun to be thinking, is this the night that dad's going to come in and kill us? You know what I mean? Is he going to like kill me first? And then, is this stuff that would just roll through my mind because my dad was walking around talking about killing us all and then killing himself? Um, you know, no child should have to live like that. That's terrible. And then when I got older, I started to realize like, oh, he's just absolutely insane. You know what I mean? So, um, but before that, before I realized that he was absolutely insane, um, it was a scary, scary thing for for it would be for any child who's going through that, right? And it does happen. So I'm just here to tell you, it does happen. But he didn't kill us, like I said, which is great. But he was very, very mentally ill and psychologically unwell. Um, so that's about it for that article, and that's at cdhpi.ca. There's a little bit more to it, but not much more. So we'll go on to uh, this article. I got this is from learningtoendabuse.ca, and you can go there and look under resources events. There's a PDF called Assessing Children's Risk of Homicide. So children and domestic homicide. Domestic homicide really, I mean, it's kind of like familicide. Intimate partners may not be the only victims in a domestic homicide. In many cases, children are directly impacted by a domestic homicide on the account that they may lose a parent or both parents due to the crime. They may have witnessed or been exposed to the violence or death, or they may become a homicide victim themselves. Approximately 3,300 children lose parents to domestic homicide every year in the United States. And this is from a study done by Lewandowski from 2004. So 3,300 children lose parents to domestic homicide every year in the U.S. That's insane. So the number of children affected by the extreme violence in domestic homicide increases when one considers that roughly 3 attempted homicides occur for each completed homicide. There's 3 attempts before they actually manage to do it. That's insane. And that's what little children are growing up around. And teens, youth, and, you know, um, you know, guns and that sort of thing, violence in the home, attempted murder of their parent, one of their parents, or caregivers, whoever it is. And living around that, I mean, that's just awful. Like, that's terrible. I thought my dad was going to kill my mother. And, you know, I mean, I was talking about that last night. I actually, stood up for my mom because my brothers used to do that. Then when they moved out or whatever, then I was the only one left that could do that. So I took on that role. But the thing is like, was it a real fear that he might kill my mother? Absolutely. It was also a fear that my mom would kill my dad in self-defense. And I always thought, well, maybe my mom will take him out one day. You know, he'll attack her and she'll kill him. So it's always in the back of my mind that one of them would kill the other. One would kill the other one. So I'd be missing a parent somewhere in there. And it was just this is the way it was. And that's a horrible way to to grow up, you know. And there's these little kids out here, all around the world, but we're just talking about North America right now, who are witnessing one of their parents be killed by the other parent. And there's 3 attempts normally before the last final attempt on their life, which actually takes that person's life. So the level of violence that children are living in and growing up in is insanity. And we see some of this stuff like, there's so much real TV out there nowadays where people actually have their cell phones and they're out there filming stuff. And, we see the level of violence now. Before, it used to be kind of just sort of tucked away neatly. If you weren't part of it, you kind of didn't know about it. Nowadays, everybody can see it. It's right in our face. Little kids are growing up in that. It's no longer a movie, just a scary movie. It never was. This has been going on for years and years. Now it's just in everybody's faces, right? This has been going on since time began. People have been killing their children, killing their spouses since the beginning, as far back as you can go. So, I mean, nothing's changed. It tells you that we don't make much progress. We really don't. I'm glad you're feeling better, Boo. That's great. And I had a good day at work. It was actually a decent day. Yeah. But this topic, I just had to do this because, I mean, so many people don't even really understand what is familicide. And because if you never think about it, why would you know about it? You know what I mean? For me, I just grew up in this garbage, so I know about this stuff, and it's horrible. And they said here, um, they go on to talk about this. Hold on one sec here. They said motivations for killing the children. There may be multiple motivations behind killing a child in the context of domestic violence situations. Children can be used as a direct target for retaliation against an intimate partner and are killed for the purpose of inflicting harm on the child's other parent. So, in other cases, the children, the ex partner, the perpetrator are killed in the context of domestic violence. In these cases of familicide, killing of multiple family members may represent situations where the perpetrator is very controlling, but also very dependent on family members. And some authors have suggested that the perpetrator may be overwhelmed by shame in the sense that they have not lived up to their gender role expectations as a husband and father. So, if the perpetrator feels that his domination of the family is threatened, often by family members, threats or to leave or report his abuse to others, he may resort to homicidal violence in a misguided effort to maintain his control and prevent a complete rupture of the family unit. That's kind of bizarre. I never thought about that. My dad was actually, I don't know now if my dad was doing this familicide type threatening before before I was born. I mean, I only know kind of what I saw. And I was really only cognitive from about 4. So I don't remember too much before the age of 4. But I do have really solid memories from 4 on, from 4 years old on. So um, by the time I was 6, I was really well cognitive. It was just you had to be very you had to be very careful in my home, and you had to be paying attention because there was a lot of abuse going on. So it's like just to avoid some abuse, you had to be sort of paying attention. Um, so I had to kind of learn at an early age to be watching what was going on and listening and paying attention because I was concerned about wasn't didn't know so much about him killing me, but my mom would talk about it to us, right, to the children. And because my dad would be walking around talking about killing us, and then my mom would be upset and she'd be like kind of freaking out, and it was just a bad scene, right? Some of my older siblings would be, you know, upset, so then I would want to know what's going on. I was just a little girl, and then they'd be talking about the issue that my dad was possibly going to kill us all, and so then I got to clue in to what was going on. You know what I mean? Um, and so yeah, I mean it was kind of because people were talking about it, my siblings and especially my mom and my siblings. So it was a real, actual, real threat, and it was a real fear that he could do something like that. And but I don't think my mom was really all that concerned. I think she just realized he was just very mentally ill, and otherwise, you'd think she would have got us out of the home. It's like, but she was one my abuser, so it's like she wasn't really all that interested in protecting me, right? It's kind of sad but true. I think about those days back when I was really that age, very young, and just what a mess our home was, and how bad it really was. It was absolutely horrible. And children are growing up like that all the time, with the gun violence in their homes, people shooting at their you know their parents. One of the parents shooting at the other parent. Guns and drugs, and what a mess, right? I mean, no child should have to grow up in that. And then it's no wonder we have so many kids growing up to be then involved in criminal activity or repeating the abuse that they witnessed at home or were forced to actually endure. Um, it's all they know, right? And so you see some of these kids, and some of these youth who will be talking in any kind of an interview thing, and they're just like, they don't know anything different. That's all they know, right? And it's a sad situation. It really, really is. So they said characteristics of child homicide and domestic violence situations. Um, they go on, they talk quite a bit about that, but it's mostly stats stuff. There's usually a history of child abuse, prior family involvement with agencies, and domestic violence within the family, of course, right? And they said other important factors include past child abduction or threats of abduction, threats of killing the child. And I think, some of this has to do with, some of these cases have to do with the fact that the one parent is threatening to leave and threatening to take the children. And so the parent who ends up killing them to stop them from leaving ends up killing them. That's actually in this article here with warning signs. So we'll take a look at that. But yeah, it's just distressing. And well, thank you, Boo. I appreciate that. Well, these are, really sad topics. It's not fun to talk about. Like I said, it's not fun to listen to. It's definitely not fun to talk about. But it's real, and it is happening. And it's just a good idea for people to remember that child abuse is deadly. All abuse is deadly. It has a potential to become deadly. And that's why we're losing to children and other people, to abuse all the time. They're ending up in body bags in the morgue, right? And so this is for real. This is not just made up stuff. This has just been going on forever. And we need to come up with better programs and better help for people. It just shows you that people are really not that important in the scheme of things. Because otherwise there'd be a whole lot more work being done to try to save people from this kind of stuff. But it's kind of like, the world body governments and all of this that sit around and dictate our lives. They're just like, well, let them kill each other, like whatever, you know what I mean? We don't want to put too much money on this thing. It's like it just shows you that we're just really not that important because otherwise they'd be doing something about it. Um, there'd be a whole lot more money put into this, to save children from abuse and to get women to safety or even to men to get to safety because there are women abusers out there. Um, you know, this is not okay. We all need to wake up and smell the coffee, everybody, and stop abusing each other and stop abusing children, stop killing people. Like, I'm tired of the violence. I was tired of violence. And that's why I mentioned that in my book. I talked about it quite a bit. I had had enough of violence. I mean, and I didn't grow up in some of these, like some of these kids grow up like in these gang, um, you know, neighborhoods in like big cities like LA or New Jersey or New York or you know places like that. Certain cities that just have a rap for being, or Chicago or places like that that just there's a lot of problems. And I mean, I didn't grow up in one of those places like in this serious. I just grew up in a home that was just full of domestic violence and garbage, and it was horrible. You know what I mean? So it's like I just feel bad for these people who grew up in those other types of environment where there's people shooting at people all the time and somebody getting shot. Like I mean, hundreds of people a day are shot and murdered in those some of those cities. That's insane. That's somebody's mom. That's somebody's dad, most likely. And a lot of times it's kids, little kids getting shot. Oh, it's just really heartbreaking. What are you gonna do? So we will go over and take a look at warning signs of high risk factors for when women are killed. This is an article that's really about violence against women, and it's actually from Immigrant and Refugee ENFF. It's called Neighbors, Friends, and Families, Immigrant and Refugee Communities. But this is really information that could just be helpful for anybody. Um, because this is talking about domestic homicide. So we're not just talking about domestic abuse. The abuser killed the person he was abusing, or whatever. We're talking about violence against women. Even though I know for sure that it's not just always male perpetrated abuse. I mean, or homicide, because women kill too, and women are perfectly capable of abusing. I mean, my mom was my main abuser, so it's like, women can abuse. And my mom's mom was her main abuser, and killed one of her sons. So women can be abusers too, and it's not just about men being the abuser, as they, so many years ago, like to portray the whole situation. Women have been killers and murderers and abusers just as long as men have. It's just that there are more men that actually do commit these things. It's less, like there's less numbers of women that actually do kill their partners, but it does happen. And there's men that are abused and battered too. My sister was abusing her husband. I talked about that many times. Um, because she was going to make sure that she got the upper hand, just like my mom. She was my oldest sister, the oldest one, and so she was the firstborn. I'm the lastborn. So she was 18 years older than me, but she was very abusive to her husband. Her husband had broke his neck in a car accident and lived and survived, which was amazing. And he had problems with his neck because of that. He had surgery, he had plates and all sorts of things in his neck because he had broke his neck. And she would like smack him in the neck and knock him down the stairs and stuff like this. She was highly, highly abusive to her husband and to her children, really. She was just like another copycat of my mom, really, in many ways. I don't think she was as abusive as my mother. My mother was like really good at it. But my sister was, was following after her for sure. So women can be abusers too, just so everybody knows. It's not just always men. Women are abusers too. But this article is actually talking about violence against women, and that's important because there are a lot of problems with violence against women. And what to look for as far as this, domestic homicide, which really, I mean, I'm talking about familicide here tonight, but that's really part of it. Domestic homicide. That's exactly what it is. The abuser killed the person they were abusing, right? We're talking about violence against women, so this is kind of interesting information. Obsessive behavior. This is the 10 most common risk factors that they found. Number one, obsessive behavior. Any actions or behaviors by the perpetrator that indicate an intense preoccupation with the victim. For example, stalking behaviors such as following the victim, spying on the victim, making repeated phone calls to the victim, or excessive gift giving, etc. And number two, actual or pending separation. The partner wanted to end the relationship, or the perpetrator was separated from the victim but wanted to renew the relationship, or there was a sudden and or recent separation, or the victim had contacted a lawyer and was seeking a separation or divorce. So that's when the perpetrator, um, you know, decides that there's really no other choice for them except for to kill that person. This is why we see women, especially a lot of women and some men, being killed by their intimate partners or whoever, their spouse or whatever. And it's just sad. It's very, very sad. Number three, a history of domestic violence. This incident did not have to necessarily result in charges or convictions and can be verified by any record, police reports, medical records, or witness, family members, friends, neighbors, coworkers, etc. It could be as simple as a neighbor hearing the perpetrator screaming at the victim, or include a coworker noticing bruises consistent with physical abuse on the victim while at work. So, a history of domestic violence. So, in these types of homes, um, or situations where the perpetrator is already abusing the other their partner, whoever it is. It's just going to be so much easier for them to kill them. You know what I mean? That's why my mom was always threatening to kill me because she was already abusing me, and my dad was always threatening to kill us because he was abusing us. So it kind of goes along hand in hand, right? Which is really really sad. That's why we see children being killed all the time. Depression of the perpetrator, number four. In the opinion of any family, friends, or acquaintances, and regardless of whether or not the perpetrator received treatment, they displayed symptoms characteristic of depression. So even without a diagnosis, they may, they may or may not have received treatment, but they showed signs of depression. Prior threats or attempts to commit suicide. So it's kind of like that was my dad. He was suicidal, and then was talking about killing us and killing himself. Um, that was scary. I thought for sure like he would kill himself. For sure, because he used to run out on the freeway and in the middle of the night trying to get hit by semi trucks and stuff like this. So this is how we grew up. My brothers would have to go get him off the freeway and drag him home, just to make sure he didn't kill himself. Um, my mom was like, you know, just like some nights she'd be like, just let him kill himself, whatever. She was so tired of his craziness, but he was very mentally unwell and very mentally unstable at that point in our lives. He stopped doing that, I would say, by the time I was maybe 12, 13, right in there. He actually stopped doing that. So he stopped, as far as I know, he may have tried a suicide attempts without us knowing about it, but, right around there is when I started to notice that he was not attempting suicide anymore. So he started to, his mental health improved through those years. It doesn't mean he wasn't still abusing my mother and abusive to us, and beating me up, but he wasn't trying to kill himself anymore. So, you know, it's just insane. This stuff is insane, right? Um, so it said any recent act or comment made by the perpetrator that was intended to convey the perpetrator's idea of or intent of committing suicide, even if the act or comment was not taken seriously. These comments could have been made verbally, delivered in letter format, left on an answering machine, and these comments can range from explicit, like, if you ever leave me, then I'm going to kill you, or then I'm going to kill myself, or I can't live without you. That's a big one. That's a big one to watch out for if you're in a situation where you're in a domestic violence situation, and you hear your your partner knows you really planning on getting out at some point, and they'll say stuff like, if you leave, I'll kill myself, or I can't go on without you. Life isn't worth living without you. That's a controlling, very controlling person who's going to use any and all and every possible psychological, you know, way to try to get you to stay so they can keep abusing you, right? They don't plan on changing. They just want you to stay and be happy being abused. It's like, and as soon as a lot of times those people, whoever they are, men, women, um, leave those abusive relationships, they're killed because that person was not fooling around. Their partner was serious about it. It's like, I can't live without you, so I'm going to kill you. And then they sometimes kill themselves. But the issue is like, this is really sad, But I mean, my sister was telling me some stuff about this guy that she was seeing, who was telling her stuff like that, and I was like, man, he'd be talking about killing himself if she ever left him, and I'm like, bad scene. He's just manipulating you, you know. I mean, she should know because we all grew up in the same home with this craziness between our parents, abusing us and abusing each other, and the manipulation and garbage that goes on, right? So she should have known what to look out for. I told her, you better watch out for that. So she actually broke it off with that guy because he was just not well. He was very unstable. And escalation of violence. Number six, the abuse, maltreatment, physical, psychological, emotional, sexual, etc., inflicted upon the victim by the perpetrator was increasing in frequency and severity. For example, this can be evidenced by more regular trips for medical attention or include an increase in complaints of abuse to or by family, friends, or other acquaintances. So, an escalation of violence. So, things are just getting worse. And, and then it just comes to murder, right? That's terrible. Absolutely terrible. A victim, number 7, victim had intuitive sense of fear. The victim is one that knows the perpetrator best and can accurately gauge the level of risk. And if the woman discloses, or I'd say women, this is a violence against women article, so that's why they're saying that, but really it could be anybody, right? If the woman discloses to anyone her fear of the perpetrator harming herself or her children, for example, statements such as "I fear for my life," "I think he will hurt me," "I need to protect my children," this is a definite indication of serious risk. Absolutely. A lot of times, the sad part is I think most of the time, sometimes I know people are, people get out, right? As I was saying, domestic violence shelters are full here in Calgary year round, 365 days a year. So, there's lots that do get out, but many of them go back to the abuser. I forget what I know Donna Shear and myself, and we used to do all sorts of shows and stuff and talks dealing with this kind of stuff. And there's a large percentage of people who actually leave their abusers and end up going back to their abusers. So they get out and they're in a shelter, and the shelter provides an apartment for them or whatever, gets them stabilized. They've got a nice little apartment somewhere, furnished. It's all furnished. They've got clothes, even maybe like a part-time job. And then, the abuser starts calling or coming around, and "I'm sorry, and I'll change, and you know, let's get back together." And then they get back together with the abuser. Abusers, I've never, I don't, abusers don't change. You know, they don't. It's. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe there could be a small amount of abusers that actually change, but not very many, because it's a lifestyle. It's a way of dealing with life. That's how they control and get what they want. And a lot of times it's a control issue, like I said. Yeah, or they agree to counseling, that kind of stuff. Well, see now, I do believe the people now who really want to change can change. But we see by what's going on out there in the headlines, in the news, that most people don't want to change. You know, they just keep that lifestyle going. And so people going back to their abusers, I mean, that's scary, man. It's like not. I don't think it's just not a good idea. I don't think people change that much. Um, Prior threats, number 8. Prior threats to kill the victim. Any comment made to the victim or others that was intended to instill fear for the safety of the victim's life. So these comments could have been delivered verbally, in a letter form, or answering machine. Like, the threats can range in degree from, like, "I'm going to kill you," to "You're going to pay for what you did," or "If I can't have you, then nobody can." If I can't have you, then nobody can. That's common actually with people, unfortunately. And "I'm going to get you," right? And those are real threats. I mean, people need to take that kind of stuff serious, because people don't usually mess around when they're starting to threaten like that. People say, "Oh no, they're just threatening. That's just the way they are," you know, and they blow it off, and then within a few months they're dead. And this is stuff, you know, not to blow off, not to just think, "Oh well, they're just saying that he or she would never hurt me," or whatever. No, you better think twice about that. That's awful. Number 9, excessive alcohol and or drug use. And they said an increase in the pattern of use and or change of character or behavior that's directly related to the alcohol and or drug use can indicate excessive use by the perpetrator. Um, for example, people describe the perpetrator as constantly drunk or claim that they never saw this person without a beer in his hand or whatever. And that this dependence on a particular substance may have impaired the perpetrator's health or social functioning, overdose, job loss, arrest, etc. And so, it just escalates it. Excessive alcohol and or drug use. I think it can, because people that are drinking, are, already highly abusive, and then drinking or doing drugs, they're just that much more messed up. You know what I mean? Um, I knew a lot of abusive drug addicts, so and they could be really nice when they were sort of not really screwed up so high or so whatever, and super charming. But then they do too many drugs and they turn into like it was like that Doctor uh, Jack between that what is it that Jekyll and Hyde thing, where they're nice 1 minute, then they do too many drugs and they're a monster, right? And you're like, whoa, what's going on? Um, that's actually I think more common than people realize. And I mean, I had friends who were involved in domestic violence situations, and I was afraid for their lives because I actually wrote about this in one of my books and talked about it quite a bit. But my friend down in the States, my best friend, when we were in our like very early 20s, still using a lot of drugs, and her boyfriend was highly abusive and also a major, massive drug addict. And um, they fought all the time, domestic disputes. They had a small baby, and I was worried for the baby's life. I was worried for my friend's life because this guy was dangerous, absolutely dangerous. And I mean, he threatened my life. He punched me in the face. He choked me one time because I was trying to protect her, and you know, she just didn't want to leave him. You know, I'm just like, I said, you got to watch that. I said, because he could kill you. I was having a conversation with her one time about it. I said, he could kill you. He is much stronger than her. I said, and much more evil. And she said, oh no, I'll kill him first. I'm like, what kind of life is that? You're going to go to prison. Your baby's going to go to care, and your life is, you know, done. You can't just kill people. Um, but people do, sadly enough. Anyway, she finally did leave him. Thank God. Got away from him, and her and her daughter are doing just fine. So it's a story that ends well, and I'm really happy because I love her very much. She's on the cover of Levita Juby's book, and that's my friend Diane. And she helped me get through some tough times when we were young, and we both helped each other, and we both really relied on each other a lot. So I was there. I wanted to be there to help her. And I mean, I felt so bad because I really felt he was going to kill her. But one of his sisters ended up getting killed in a domestic homicide. His younger sister, Larissa, was shot and gunned down by her husband, and leaving the two baby, like toddler sons behind with this crazy maniac dad going to prison. So I think the grandparents ended up with the two boys. They'd never know their mother. They were only about 3 years old, 2.5, 3 years old or something. Three. I think one was just a baby, like two. The other one was closer to 4. And they'd never remember their mother. You know, that's just so heartbreaking. Oh my God. And that's a situation where we had no idea that she was in a situation where she was with a man, living with a husband, married a husband, who actually had the potential and the capability to shoot her dead. None of us knew. Maybe somebody a little closer to her knew, but like her friends, myself and other friends that just knew her, hung around a little bit with her, had no idea. It was a shock to me. And this stuff does happen. It can happen. It doesn't always happen. My sister was in an abusive relationship. Her husband was abusing her, and he wasn't abused. The abuse did not spill over to their daughter, to my niece, but there was some abuse there. And we told her, you, what are you doing in this abusive relationship? He's just abusing you. What are you doing in there? Staying in that? So she did end up divorcing him, and um, I think that's just the best thing that she could have done. You know what I mean? It's like, you know she ended up with custody of the daughter of her daughter, and he didn't contest it or anything like that. He just married somebody else and abused this other woman and had children with her. And so my sister got out of that, and I was really proud of her. I'm like, right on. And she on purpose did not date or see anybody until her daughter was grown up, like to a certain age, because She didn't want these strangers and these people coming around who could potentially end up hurting her daughter or causing more trouble. So she just raised her daughter, worked, and I give her a lot of credit. She got out of an abusive relationship, and I just give her a lot of credit because she did it on her own, basically. Um, that's awesome. So yeah, I mean, I think it's just, save your life, get out, man. Some of these people, I mean, they are capable of killing, and people say, oh no, they wouldn't do that, you know, but they do. Number 10, this is the 10th sign of, potential domestic homicide. Perpetrator unemployed. So, um, employed means having full time or near full time employment, including self employment. Unemployed means experiencing frequent job changes or significant periods of lacking a source of income. And they said that that can be a factor. So, they're stressed out, substance abuse, prior threats to kill the victim, prior threats or attempts to commit suicide. This is somebody who's very unstable, who would be capable of killing, their partner, possibly one child or more children involved, because their life is unstable. They're unstable, you know, and that's sad. But this is just the case, and this is what we see in those headlines that roll out. Where somebody's taken the whole family out and then themselves, and it, like I said, thankfully it doesn't happen all the time. It's not common, but it does happen, and it's just incredibly sad. Or maybe they don't kill all the children, and then they only kill a couple of the children, and there's still two or three children left, and there's no parents left, and the children are, without their parents and their other siblings because they're dead. And this sort of stuff is just tragic. There has to be help for people out there who are experiencing this kind of stuff. And, it's a sad situation that so many people, you know, are involved in substance abuse, drug abuse, alcoholism, and it does ruin families. Absolutely, it does. I got off the drugs when I was 22, and I decided I want to live like a violent-free life. I was tired of violence. I was tired of drugs. I was like, I was tired of abuse. I mean, I grew up abused, and then I was just around abuse with my friends. I'm like, you know, I want a better life. I want to do like normal life. You know, like somehow, some way, there has to be a better life. I just knew there had to be a better life, and it's you know, I mean, it's not exciting. Nobody's getting beat up around me. No, there's no guns going off. There's no cocaine sitting on the table. It's not an exciting life. You know, a lot of times people are addicted to that lifestyle, and it's the highs of the excitement of something always going on, some sort of drama or trauma, and trauma addicted. And for me, I was so done. I'm like, I'm so sick and tired of people punching me in the face and slamming me into walls, and I'm tired of the drugs. I just wanted a better life. And so I thought, I have to get off the drugs, first of all. So I did. It took me a while to do it too. It took me like a year just to be able to just not look for more cocaine. I was like, I was a coke addict. I was a crystal meth user, and I was also a speed addict. So I mean, I was really doing a lot of bad, horrible drugs, and I was like, I'm just gonna just do it. I still fight addiction. I smoke, like I smoked cigarettes for years. Now it's just vape. I'm just vaping nicotine. But I mean, I've fought addiction my whole life. But I look. I mean, I don't. I kind of don't get too hard on myself. I mean, I look at what I grew up in and the mess that I came from, and I think, okay, so I vape and I smoke cigarettes, like whatever. You know what I mean? I don't do drugs anymore and I don't drink, so I think I'm doing really well. I drink coffee, and I just wanted an abuse-free, a violent-free life, because I was so tired of violence and seeing people hurt. And it wasn't even just just me crying the blues about me getting hurt. I was really tired of seeing people around me being hurt, and I was like, this is really just, when does this end? It has to end at some point. There has to be something better, you know. Not everybody can get off the drugs like that. Two of my brothers couldn't, and they killed themselves. So, it's a sad situation out here for people. and so many people's lives are ruined because someone won't go get help, or someone's got some issues going on, and in this marital relationship or in this intimate partner relationship, and they can't think of anything better to do but abuse and kill their family. I mean, it's got to change. We all just need to keep working at you know looking for these programs that will help families. If you suspect abuse, if you think someone's being abused, like if you think a child's being abused around you, you get that child some help. Make a phone call. You can save that child's life. You'd have a better chance at a better life. Even though, hey, we know that foster care and all that stuff and government institution stuff is not all that 100%, you know, great thing that they all say it is, because abuse happens there too. But still, the child would have a better chance at having a better life, and maybe, hopefully, right? This whole thing is such a mess. So that's why I'm talking about it. That's why we keep talking about it. And I'm very, thankful that I've been able to do this, for well since 2009 anyway, and just try to raise awareness and do what I can. I do support groups that work to stop and prevent child abuse. All my books proceeds go to Advocates United for Humanity, and that's headed up as it's a not-for-profit run by Donna Shear, Lee Roberts, and Donna Shear, who's here with me tonight. Donna Shear is the one who actually helped me to get my books published. She's my first publisher, and she is the person who's responsible for helping me get all that done. And um, so all of my book proceeds go to help into programs to help stop and prevent child abuse. And it's an honor, because it's all really in honor of a child who was killed in Donna's community, Anson Stover, and he died from the abuse that he suffered. And he was just this little boy, this cute little boy that, I wish I had a son like that. I'd just love him and take care of him. And, he died needlessly, and their whole community was very affected by that. And so I just dedicated those books in honor for of his name, in honor for him, and that the money should go to help stop and prevent child abuse, right? And that's where the money's always gone for those books. So, well, I appreciate you, because this wouldn't have happened without you. I wouldn't have got this done. I mean, I had a few people telling me I should publish my books, but well, you were the first one, and I had Tammy Bain as well, my good friend from my youth. So who knew me as the crazy drug addict? You know what I mean? She's an author, and she actually said I should publish it too. So the three books. So Donna Shear is really responsible for that. Lee Roberts as well. So Lee Roberts was one of my first editors to edit my book and stuff, and they both helped me out a lot immensely. So we worked together for since 2009 basically, and that's many years talking about the issues of child abuse and issues of child abuse prevention and awareness. And Donna shares the action behind the words, getting laws passed and laws changed. And, it's amazing. It's just absolutely amazing. I love the work that you do, Donna. And you, like I said, you're really my hero, because, for all the abused children out there who didn't make it, you're out here fighting for the children for tonight, to save their lives. I think that's just wonderful. And so I think that's it for tonight. I think we'll end this show now. Thanks for being here, everybody. I really appreciate it. Learn how to report properly, child abuse. Make sure that you look around, make sure your children are safe. They're not being abused. Abuse happens where the children are. So you have to know, like, wherever your children are, that's where the abuse is going to happen. So you have to know who's around your child at all times, and look for the signs, know the symptoms, check out the children in around you in your life, your children's friends or whatever. Make sure they're not being abused, you know, because pretty much 1 in 4 boys, 1 in 4 girls, North America wide, is being abused in some way, physically, sexually, verbally, emotionally. And so if your children have 4 friends, one of them is being abused. So it's just, we need to do something, right? Thank you very much, and I love you too, very much so. I love all my friends. Thank you for your support and for being here. And I wish you a wonderful, wonderful night. I'll be back on tomorrow night, 8 o'clock p.m., and I'll set the show page up tomorrow because I don't want to ding people every day like 25 shows. Like, so I'm just creating the show page that day. So I'll create the show page and I'll be back on tomorrow night, 8 o'clock p.m. Have a great night, everybody. Take care.